And we are back on WFNC 640 AM. I am Wendy Harris, and we are talking real estate with Team Harris. And yeah, so that basically means I'm your host today. So it is great to be here. And today we are discussing the National Association of Realtors report, which is entitled, it's a very catchy title. It is the 2022 Profile of Home Buyers and Sellers. The National Association of Realtors does many reports every year. This particular one is based on a 41-year history of data set. Yeah, 41 years. So it's basically a history book with an update to it. And it holds 142 pages of content. And because I am a Realtor member, I get access to some really nice summaries and some bullet points and stuff. I do like reading the entire book, and I download it regularly on an annual basis when it comes out. However, we're going to summarize. I am not reading the whole book to you. Whew, sigh of relief. And in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to see if we can get through 11 hot points of this profile of home buyers and home sellers. Just for a quick review, of course, the number of first-time home buyers on the market, and first-time home buyer is defined as someone who's never owned a home or hasn't owned a home in the last 3 years, has dropped to an all-time low. The high was back in 2009, just 13 years ago, and that high was 50% of all buyers on the market were first-time home buyers. The last time we had a low was back in the late 80s, and it dropped to 30%. But this year, yes, we have reached a record. We are down to an all-time low of 26%, and that is important to understand that only 26%, just a quarter of buyers on the market are first-time home buyers. That is a warning sign, people. And not only is it a warning sign, it actually should be making most people say, oh my gosh, what does that mean if these people are forced to stay out of the market for the next decade due to multiple factors? And what does that do to generational wealth building for an entire generation of Americans and the future of what this country looks like economically speaking? I hope there are really intelligent people sitting in a room together having this conversation, all with different specializations and no one with their head up their bum, because that is a very important thing to begin figuring out. Another informational piece that should be of importance to everyone listening is that the age of the first-time home buyers and repeat buyers has hit all-time highs. And normally you would say that high numbers are good things, but in this case, it just means that it's taking people a lot longer to feel comfortable breaking into the market for the first time. It's been pretty steady for the last 3 years. 33 years of age was the average age at which people became first-time homeowners in the United States. The other interesting one is repeat buyers have reached all-time highs. That has gone up to age 59. So we've got an average age of 59 of people feeling comfortable going on and taking on another mortgage. And that may be because people are working longer later in life. It could be also that they've just had really good investments over these great several years of economic growth that we've had, and so that they're more comfortable that they can sustain whatever they've got going on. Now, here's the third thing. Here's another one. Here's number 3 for your list of things to pay attention to. The share of white and Hispanic or Latino buyers grew, while Black, African American, and Asian Pacific Islander buyers retreated. Interesting. What is this all about? And where does this come to? This is where 41 years of information makes a difference. This is not opinions, people. You need to understand there are actually studies that support all of this information, as well as a lot of history. We know the history of home ownership in this country. We know that federally through laws that home ownership was restricted among all minorities in this country. It's a fact. There's nothing to argue about there. It happened. There's actually government documents that still pull up that do it. We have restrictive covenants. We have deeds that kept minorities out of neighborhoods. No one could get a loan if you were a minority. Just lots of different stuff here. And so what we are seeing, though, as well, is that Black African American renters, they are paying a disproportionate amount to rental costs. And as rents rise, it's going to continue to pull back Black minority buyers. And they are, and Black minority buyers are more likely to be first-time home buyers. Keep that in mind. They are more likely to be first-time home buyers than your white, Hispanic, Latino buyers. So it's particularly your white Caucasians, which is so disproportionate. When you talk about race and ethnicity of home buyers, I mean, you've got among, white Caucasian, we're up in the 80th percentile, and everything else is just so much lower when it comes down. And white buyers are more likely to be repeat buyers and to have housing equity down payment for the next property. It makes sense. The sooner you get into the real estate ownership game, the home ownership, then you get to build equity in a property, and then that equity becomes your leverage towards going into other properties. It's not political. These are not political statements. These are just a matter of fact. It's basic economics 101. And then another interesting fact is, and as sad as that is, we have a lot of work to do in that area, but this again is just the numbers. It's not about, how do you fix it? This is just saying this is the reality of what's happening on the market. And number 4, small towns and rural areas. This is an interesting one. We heard about it in the newspapers. We've got all the facts to substantiate it, but to also tell us at what degree. We can feel things happening throughout a year, but then when we are able to look back and look at statistics, we can say, wow, this is what really happened. So small towns and rural areas saw a migration flow while there was a retraction of buying in urban areas and suburbs. That sentence is a quote from this report in summary. Okay. Buyers, they choose where they want to live for multiple reasons. And this pandemic made a lot of people want to move out of the cities and into the towns. And affordability was the number one reason for it. According to people, it was affordability, and that's going to get worse and worse and worse. So the pandemic's no longer the reason for leaving the cities. Now it's the affordability aspect of it. The ability to work remotely is a key part of that, though. So don't think that it's just affordability, because people are able to work remotely. Family support systems being just down the street, that was a really big part of it as well, because if you can, especially as a young family, find yourself near family, then it alleviates costs of healthcare, those types of things. Or also, if you're near an aging parent, it could alleviate the cost of having to put a parent into care. So we've got lots of dynamics happening in our market. But the biggest area of growth was in those rural areas, went from 12 to 19%. Small towns went from 20% to 29%. Urban Central saw a reduction of 13 to 10%, and suburbs subdivision living dropped from 51% down to 39%. Saw a whole bunch of shifts. Saw a whole bunch of shifts in the market. Just very interesting stuff happening out there. Another item of interest that everyone should be paying attention to, this is number 5 on the list of 11, is how far a buyer moved. How far do buyers typically move in our market? And it's been steady. It's been steady for a long time, long time, between 10 to 15 miles. When buyers move 10 to 15 miles is how far they typically move. That has changed. That has shifted, and not in a small way. Not in a small way. We're talking about more 3 times it. Now, on average, it is 50 miles. 50 miles. And that is a huge change. It is actually indicative of buyers separating themselves from city centers and moving to inner suburbs, or moving from city centers or inner suburbs to rural areas. Okay, that boost in small town living was a big sign of this. So in the past year, that is what's happened. Yeah, big deal that people are really uprooting and ready to move away. Further away than what they ever did before. Number 6 on our list of 11 things to pay attention to from this report is the share of all cash or repeat buyers jumped. Okay, all cash buyers. We saw it even in this market. My gosh, if you're out there and you work in the real estate industry, how many buyers who never had cash in prior years claim they didn't, whatever the case may be, all of a sudden people had cash. So the share of all cash repeat buyers, this is not first-time home buyers didn't come with cash. These are repeat buyers. It went up over 10% just in the past year. We went from 17 to 27%. homeowners who have accumulated so much equity in the last decade. Okay, on average, they've accumulated equity of about $210,000. I mean, that's big. That's a big deal, and it's allowed many to not have to hold a mortgage payment at all and be able to pay cash for their purchases. It's just a huge difference. Now, the share of first-time home buyers who paid cash remained unchanged it's pretty much been the same since the beginning of dawn, and it's a measly 3%. So that hasn't really changed much at all. So this is directly tied to prior homeowners who had equity in their homes now able to pay cash for properties. So buyers who actually financed their homes, repeat buyers dropped from 83% to 73% of those who financed their homes, and first-time buyers who financed their homes grew and continue to grow steadily because they're not going to be able to do it, but it still remained at about roughly 3%. It was 4% before, but a while ago. Now, tenure in home before selling is returning to an all-time high. A few years ago, buyers were in their homes for 6 or 7 years before someone traded them in and moved out. We dropped down to about 8 years. Back in 2020, 21, it was down to about 8 years. For years, for a really, really long time, we were kind of around 6 years. People would move every 6 years. That took us through to about 2008, and then it slowly started to rise. And we hit about a 10-year average several times back in 2013, 2015, 16, 2019. We're all at about 10 years. We had begun to drop back down to 8 years and headed back towards those lower numbers of the number of time people would move between houses. But now we're back up to 10. Okay. Moving had become much more common due to job locations and those types of things. Back in 2021, we saw a lot of people changing location, moving out of those cities, but now we're back up to 10 years. That 10-year high, which is the highest we've been historically, and we're back up there again. Okay, number 8 on the list of 11, expected tenure for first-time home buyers. It's an all-time high. Okay, in 2007, the expected tenure of first-time home buyers was about 7 years. First-time home buyers would hold on to a house for about 7 years versus the 10 years that repeat buyers were at. They would be in there for 7 years. That has risen to an all-time high of 18 years. So expected tenure of first-time home buyers. Let's read this just a little bit. If a first-time buyer was able to enter the housing ladder in the last year, they would have less intention of moving quickly. So first-time home buyers have actually exceeded repeat buyers. Repeat buyers are saying, yeah, we might stay in our home for 15 years. That's what repeat buyers are saying. Maybe first-time home buyers are like, heck no. Yeah, no, the likelihood is we're going to be here for a good 18 years. That means giving birth to a child and putting them all the way through high school in the same house. So just interesting to see, very interesting to see, because that's a big change over a 13, 14-year period to go from first-time home buyers saying, yeah, we'll buy our first home. It's just going to be a starter home. We're just going to be here to begin with. And then we're going to move it and move up, and we're going to find something else. And then maybe we'll move every 10 years or so. No, now they're like, we bought it. We're here. We're staying. We're going to be here for the long haul. Number 9 on the list, buyers are diversifying when they pull together the down payment for a home. They are buyers. What that means is where buyers come up with the money for their down payment, they're diversifying where that money comes from. They're getting it from lots of different places. So before, we used to see primarily the place that first-time home buyers would get their down payment money from would be their savings account. Okay. But if we look at all buyers, it used to be mostly from the savings for all buyers, and then some from the proceeds of the home. When we look at first-time home buyers, obviously there aren't a lot that are going to get it from a proceeds of a home, because they would have had to have sold that house more than 3 years ago to be qualified as a first-time home buyer, or to have inherited a property or something like that. So in the first-time home buyers, 64% of buyers, their savings are coming from, their down payment is coming from savings, and then repeat buyers, obviously more of the money is coming from the sale of the home. But we've seen a sharp increase as well in the number of people who are finding in first-time home ownership, getting, 22% of them are getting gifts or loans from friends and family to get into houses. And then 15% of first-time home buyers are actually selling stock options or getting, borrowing from their 401ks, those types of things. All right, number 10 on the list, first-time home buyers are moving directly from a family member's home into home ownership at an all-time high. So we've seen this trend. We're wondering, what are all these kids staying at home for until they're 30? Oh my gosh, what's going on? That's insane. Well, a lot of them are saving rent. They are saving money for down payments. They are getting this figured out. And instead of becoming renters, they are moving straight from the family home into their own home that they own. Just an interesting trend, okay? The share of first-time home buyers who rented before buying dropped from 73% down to 64%. Very interesting trend, and one to pay attention to. And then number 11 on the list, the very last thing on the list of this summary, there's a lot more in this book, but the one last thing I'm going to bring your attention to is buyers and sellers use and want the help and expertise of a real estate agent. 88% of buyers used a real estate agent to purchase their home. Buyers are most satisfied with their agent's honesty and integrity. Yes, all of this was pulled. So I'm happy to say that still the majority of real estate professionals and realtors are actually considered to be honest and have integrity, and that the knowledge of the purchase process was one of the primary reasons for using a realtor. And for sellers, 80% of sellers used an agent to sell their home. We'll dig a little bit more into that when we come back from break, but just so glad that the majority of people still see value in the experts in our industry. That's just a personal win for me. When we come back in just a minute from break, we'll dig in a little bit more, but for right now, we're coming to you live from WFNC 640 AM, Talkin Real Estate with Team Harris.